Hi, my name is Mario and welcome to Plaza BI. If you haven't watched my previous video, you have it here. And in today's video, we're going to talk about what I consider the core structure of a good data model, the STAR schema. The STAR schema aims to improve the performance of your data model by creating a simple structure where you have a main table in the middle, the fact table with all the transactions, and a bunch of tables around it, basically the dimensions. That is going to allow you to slice and dice the data as you wish. With no further ado, let's jump to my laptop and just present the scenario for today. What you see now in the screen is just a list of transactions that I asked ChatGPT to generate for me. So basically, to me data that I can work with. This data represents the transactions that happen within a store. So you have a bunch of products here, the prices, the store ID, different currencies, and the transaction date, for example. And we're going to import this into our data model and build a star schema from that. As you can see, the data is split by commas, so we need to accommodate for that in our import. So let's go to Power BI and import this. In this case, the file is an Excel file, so I'm just going to select import data from Excel, select the actual file. In the navigator, I see that there is no table detected, no range name detected. So basically, I just have the icon of a spreadsheet, and I'm just going to hit on that. And everything is being loaded into one single column. That's okay. Hit and transform data, and it has created the first query for me. I'm not going to use this one at all. I'm just going to use it as a reference. So the first thing that I will do is just rename this as raw data. I'm not planning on loading this table, so I'm just going to hit on this and then disable the load. One quick tip that I want to give you is just having this view on top of every single column. As you can see, it's saying that all the rows that are loaded are valid. There is no error detected, and there are no empty rows. And that's good to know. You're just gonna go to view and make sure that you have the column quality check here. Okay, so I have to split this by comma. So I can do that from here. I'm just gonna hit on right click on the header and say split column, split by delimiter, because the delimiter is a character, the comma. Automatically it's detecting the comma, but if I have a different character that I need to use to split the columns, I can check here, try to see if I have anything that I can use. Even you can add your own customs. So I'm just gonna say it's comma, but imagine if I have a backslash and a star in order to split the fields in my column. And then something that is important is how many or where do you want to start to split. You might only want to keep the first column. So you just say leftmost delimiter or rightmost delimiter. But in this case, I want to split every single field that I have any single occurrence of that comma within that column. And then I just hit an OK. If I go now one step back, if by any reason, let's pretend I have an extra comma at the end in one of these, it is good also to force how many columns I want to split. So if I go to this split by delimiter, I can go again to this icon, the gear icon over there. And then in the advanced options, I can say how many commas are in my file or how many columns I want to create when splitting. And in this case, it's 10. So I'm just going to leave 10, but you can say 2, 3, or so on. And that's it. Right, so everything is now split, and now I can promote the headers. So I'm just going to go to transform, use first row as headers. So I just change the date there, and then for the numeric values, unit price, I'm gonna say decimal number, quantity is a whole number, so I'm just gonna use whole numbers there, and then total amount is a decimal as well. So that's looking fine to me, and now that will be my main transaction table. So I need now to extract from here the dimensions that I want to use. One will be the calendar table. In a previous video, I have shown you how you can create your own calendar table. You can just copy this query and use it. I'm just gonna customize a little bit this one. I know that the dates I have in my file start from this year, and I ended up this in the next year, and that's it. And I will call this calendar table. Then the other dimensions, I want to get that from the main transaction table. So I can see clearly that I have product type, product code, and product name. So I can use that and create just one single table with the products. In order to get that, I will reference the main raw data. By using reference, I'm not duplicating or loading again the same table. What I'm doing is I'm just pointing to that particular table that is already loaded in Power Query. So it saves me a space. And I will call this product table, for example. And from this table, I will go to choose columns, and then I go and select everything. And I will get the product code, product name, and product type. It is good practice to just select whatever you want to keep instead of removing the columns that you don't want. I'm saying this because if by any reason there's a new column created in your file, that will probably break your query. But whereas if you are selecting exactly what you want to keep, if there are many other columns either in between or after or before one particular column, that won't never break your query because you are actually saying what you want to keep. So since I don't know if my products are repeated in this table, because the same product might be present in multiple customers, what I can do is make this table distinct. So I just gonna add at the very beginning, I want to use always less steps as possible. So I'm just gonna reduce this step and I'm just gonna say table.distant. This table is fine now, and then I will go back to the raw data. And I can see also that there is a store ID and a store name. So I will do the same. I will reference the raw data. Call this store table. And the same as before, I will just choose the columns that I want to keep. So a store ID and a store name. And the same than before, I'm not sure. In this case, I know for sure that the same store is repeated. So I will do the same trick. I will make it distinct. Okay, so I have only 4 stores. I have currency, so I will use another table just for the currencies. Same than before, reference, and then currency table, select what I want to keep. But in this case, it's just one column, so I will say right click, remove others. That essentially is the same than just selecting the columns. Distinct. Perfect. Okay, so now I have all the dimensions that I need. There is one more thing that I want to do, is just remove what I don't really need in this fact table. Imagine if I have 1 million, 3 million, 4 million of rows. The text columns are just going to take a lot of space. So it's better just to use the less columns as possible in the transaction table. VLOOKUP, whatever I need from the others. So the details, anything that is just relevant for products, store names, those kind of things can be removed from this view. So what I can do is I will get rid of those fields here. So it's not taking the space. But now you can see my query has broken because it's not able to find anymore the product type, product code, or product name that was part of the product table. So how can we solve that? In order to solve this issue, we can use the meta keyword. So if I go to raw data now, this step, I will leave it as it is. So I have removed the columns that I don't really need. And then I just gonna create a new step and say at the very end meta. And I can call this whatever I want, but I'm just gonna call this step. Select here which step from my query I want to retrieve. I will reference this to change type because it's the step where I still have those columns. So if I go here, I still have here the product name, product type, and store name. Now, in order to fix these two, I will go to the first step, the source. Instead of just retrieving raw data, because that will be the status of the table at the very end of the query, I will point to the meta. And in order to do that, I will use value.metadata, wrap my table in that parenthesis. And if I just do that, basically it retrieves all the records within that metadata. So I will just call the step, in this case, step field. Now I have back all the data that I want. So basically the status of the raw data prior to remove those columns. And then if I continue, everything is working fine. I will fix the issue in the store table as well. So again, source, value.metadata, step, and that's it. If I go to the last step, everything is working fine. All right, so now I'm happy with everything, all the dimensions that I need. The only thing that is missing is the raw data, the transaction table. So I'm just gonna reference this, and then this one is the one that I would like to load, and I will call this transactions. So enable the load, and then everything is fine. I'm just gonna save and load. Everything has been loaded, and now if I go to the third option over here, the model view, I want to point out one thing. As you can see, there are some relationships already created, and that's because I forgot one step before loading the data. If I go to the file options here, on the current file data load, I forgot to disable this thing. That allows the system to create the relationships without my permission. And I don't really need that. So what I will do is just disable that and just gonna check which kind of relationships have been created just to make sure that there is no issue. So I can see that the dimension on the store is connected to the store ID. So that's fine, that's correct. And there is a relationship one to many. So basically one record ID, unique record, is connected to many transactions in the transaction table. Then if I check the currency, same behavior. One currency code is connected to the currency code in the transaction table, one to many. And the order is the currency is filtering the transaction table. And that's important to know which table is the one that is filtering the other. Whereas in the product, since my table of products in this transaction table was unique, the system was not able to identify properly this. It's basically saying that these two triangles basically represent that both of them filter each other. So they can go either way. And the relationship is one to one. And the product code is fine. So the relationship is okay. The only thing that we need to tweak is which table is filtering the other. So if I click on the relationship itself, I can do that from here, from the model view, hit it on the connection there in the relationship, and just go to properties. Basically it's one to many, but I will call it many to one because I might have in the future many transactions pointing to the same product. And I will say many to one here. And instead of saying both cross-filter relationship, I will say single and apply. As you can see now, the direction of the relationship is correct. So product table filters the transaction table. And the last bit that I'm missing here is just the date table needs to be connected to the transaction date. So from calendar table, I'm gonna drag that to the transaction date. That's looking fine for me. There is another way of fixing this, and it's from report view, modeling, and then manage relationships. And then here you can see all the different relationships that are in my file. And now my model is actually a star schema. Star because it has a bunch of dimensions around the transaction table, as you can see here. The last thing that I want to do is convert the calendar table into a date table. Right click on the calendar table and then mark as date table. And it's gonna ask me to pick the actual date, the date field, and in this case called date, so I'm just gonna use that one and save. Now if I expand, there is a new label there in the day. I forgot one thing in terms of the model, and I will do that from the table view. I'm gonna hide the fields that I don't want the user to use on the report. So I don't want the user to use the product code from here, neither the currency, store ID, or the transaction date. Because all those fields are coming from the my dimensions. So I'm just gonna hide them. I'm gonna create a simple visual. So right click, add visual, and then from the build, and you will see a bunch of different visuals that you can use. You can even get more visuals from here, from the store, and then just hit on the table. I want to see year, month name, product name, product type. I'm just gonna order this way. See the store name as well. Total quantity, total unit price, total amount. And I will add a couple of filters here that I can use in the screen. So just hit a new visual and then use slicer, a date. The default one is just this range. That's okay for the moment. And then select now currency. I don't want to have this visual like that. So I'm just gonna go to format slicer settings, instead of having a vertical list, I'm gonna say drop down. So I have a list of currencies that I can pick from, product name. And the last slicer that I want to have is the store name, for example. Since this is a drop-down list, I want to add a search box. So more options, search, and then I can just enter, I don't know which kind of, let's say avocado, for example. I can see that then 10 avocado were sold in February this year. The amounts, if I hit on the table, the amounts, quantity, and total amount price, all of those are numeric values that I just drop it into the table. This is not the best way of doing this. The best way is just create measures for every single numerical value that you want to drop into a visual. I'm gonna create a table of measures. Table tools, new table. And I don't want to have anything in my table. It's just a way of storing the measures. So I'm just gonna call this underscore my measures. As you can see, the tables are sorted alphabetically. So if I call it underscore, it's gonna be on top of everything. It's gonna say equal, and I'm not gonna do anything else. There is one column generated automatically. I'm just gonna hide that column. I'm gonna right click on the measure name, my measure name in the table, and say new measure. A measure that is the quantity, so I can call it score quantity, for example. We're gonna elaborate more in other videos in terms of the formulas that I'm gonna use. For the moment, you just need to know that calculate is the most used formula that you're gonna find in Power BI. So I'm just gonna say calculate the total of the quantity. So you're just gonna type quantity. So it's referencing the table name and then the quantity column. Sum that, and then I'm just gonna wrap this in two parentheses. I'm gonna do the same for the total amount. Last thing that I will do is just select the measures and then change that to decimal. I want to have the separator there, and the same for the total amount. And I'm just gonna remove these three from here and use that from the total amount and quantity. Now we could start adding more format to our report, analyzing the data, finding more trends and patterns that you might find interesting. But I'm just gonna pause here for today. I hope you like it. If that's the case, please leave a comment, give a like, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for your time. Bye bye.